leadership is about having a philosophy. It's about having your values so well defined that you're going to go into this direction like Ernest did, and people are going to follow you. It's a voluntary thing. And you are volunteering your time and commitment because you are so passionate about your values and your mission that others believe in it too. It's that level of vision that creates real leadership today.
And welcome yet to another fabulous episode, my lovely people of the B2B Sales Trends Podcast, the show that brings you hacks, tips, thought leadership to the topic of B2B selling. My name is Harry Kendlbacher, and today's episode is going to be fabulous. It's really about how do you implement a leadership style in this age of AI. And I'm so pleased to have an expert and a guru in the field, really, in Jake Mannino. And Jake is the Global Sales Director at Microsoft and a little bit of a corifee in our industry. So I'm really pleased to have him on the podcast today. Welcome to the B2B Sales Trends Podcast, Jake.
Wow. Thank you, Harry. Wonderful to be here. Very excited. Not sure that I'm an expert in anything or a guru, but I'm a longtime learner and a lifetime desire to grow and help others. So thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time. Jake, give us a little bit of an intro about yourself, your role, and how we got to this place. That'd be great.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Really, from an early age, growing up in in Michigan, north of Detroit, just had from a young child, just a burning desire to have amazing experiences, but also to have the excitement of fun. And when I talk about fun, I talk about having experiences that change my perception, my life, to help me and others grow. I had worked at a very young age in my dad's retail stores. And we later on ended up owning 3 of the stores in the Tri-County Detroit area. They were beauty supply businesses. And back in the late 80s, the perm business was booming. So it was a very profitable and wild business. And it was a lot of fun. And from a young age, I learned the basics of customer support, customer service, the value of getting to know and build a relationship with your customers. Everybody that walked into that store was our friend, and we treated them like family. And I learned everything about marketing, about sales, about branding, about theft, about employee management, how to negotiate leases with landlords, how to work a cash register, and the basics of profit and loss. And I will say it always came back to that customer. And even later on, when Sally Beauty Supply came into the Detroit area and overwhelmed us with competitive threats and displacement, our niche, our focus was the customer and the value that we brought the customer by building these deep relationships, by getting to know them by name, understanding who they were and what their beliefs and their values were. That was so important. And that's what allowed us to sustain the competitive advantage over a very large rival that came in. So that was very early on in the excitement of ringing the cash register and filling the orders and communicating and being and talking with people was so exciting for me. Even when we would go to open the store, we would open at 9 a.m. and we would show up at 8:30, and there would be a line out the door of customers waiting to come in to buy products for their salons. And it was just so exciting to have that experience. I couldn't stop with sales. And later through college, as I became a social scientist, I was geared towards more academic discipline and would have been a professor. My uncle was actually a professor of anthropology, and I was going down that path, but I was so geared towards sales. And at the time before Y2K, things were so exciting. I became a COBOL developer and a mainframe application coder and worked on projects to help save the world from a 2-digit catastrophe, right? That never happened. So I coupled technology, software, application development with my sales background and desire to then form into leadership. And that's where I am today in 2025.
Isn't it interesting what you've described a second ago, that importance of relationship and getting to know the customer and, getting close to that and digging into their needs and all what you've described. Isn't it funny how this is even more than ever now still relevant to this stage, at this stage? And this, you've been describing this in the 80s, right? Now we are many years later, and I feel like it's more relevant than ever.
It is, and I would even argue that it's going to be more important, even in the age of AI, where we're living in this AC period, and we were in BC, and I say BC is before COVID, and AC is after COVID, and DC is during COVID, and I don't think anybody really remembers what happened. It's kind of blurry,
Right.
but we're in this AC period, and we're only a few years out of that. And getting back to the human connection is going to be more valuable than it's ever been. Even we're seeing this where people want the experience of the human connection. And I would believe that in time, the pendulum will swing such that people will desire the human connection more than ever, because there'll be a lack of authenticity of what we're seeing in the information that we're getting and receiving in our connections and communications. Is going to be a desire to be more authentic. And to do that, the only way to do that is human to human.
Right.
So I would
Right.
argue that we're going to see more of that, and that's going to be a greater skill set in the future than it ever has been in the past.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. In our industry, in the sales enablement space, there's a lot of talk about AI and how it replaces sellers, and it is, sales enablement, sales skills, how you engage clients and so forth. Is that still relevant, or will it be all consumed anyway with AI? And I say absolutely, even more, right? Just to your point, because it's going to, what will change is that the low skilled people will be all washed out. What's surviving is going to be the elite level, and people need to get up their game to that superior level of skill and engagement. That's what my view on this is. Do you share that view?
Yeah, I think that it's an interesting time in this time of disruption, and we've seen this. And if we study patterns and cycles that occur, we can talk about the retail apocalypse that occurred, much of which forced us to sell off our brick and mortar stores. But that was due to demands that came in that customers had, whether it was Walmart coming in even before Amazon, and then the online demand and the demand for customers to have things immediately. And so it was a change. There's always been a disruption, whether it's retail, whether it's technology. We know the Blockbuster to Netflix stories, or Kodak or any of the other great stories. But if we think here in the United States 150 years ago, 80% of the population were farmers. And fast forward to today, it's less than 2%. And what happened was a big dramatic shift due to technology, due to change in just the way that humans were going to consume things, and how we were inventing technology so rapidly that it displaced a lot of those skills. So people had to pivot, they had to change, they had to grow. It's scary. It's not easy. It's a transformation. It's a disruption. And we're seeing that now at a rapid pace, more so than ever. So being prepared is equally important, and to understand that the pattern of disruption will continue and will occur. And so if we believe that 50% of all the jobs that we know today will either be disrupted or obsolete in the next 3 to 5 years, the question is, what do we do today to help us in the future of tomorrow and help others as well?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Let's switch this conversation a bit to the one of your favorite topics, the modern sales leadership and what it really looks like. And People can look up the fact that you've led billion-dollar teams at Microsoft and Cisco, amongst other organizations.
Sure.
And in your view, what defines great leadership or sales leadership, should I say, today?
Yeah. I think there are some standards and some truths that are still in place that always have been from the days of I was selling shampoo in a beauty supply store to advanced applications and technology and software. It's if you were to imagine that you were recruiting 27 men to go on an expedition to find a passage through Antarctica, and you not only get your boat stuck on ice, but it sinks to the bottom of the Arctic Ocean, and you're stranded with 27 men on a floating piece of ice, not for 2 hours, not for 2 days, not for 2 weeks, not for 2 months, but for 2 years. And you're now your mission is to keep everybody alive. You're in survival mode. You're not in an expedition anymore. And you have such deep rapport and such deep commitment and trust with your team that you're not even keeping them alive, but you are going out to recruit a rescue mission in a small lifeboat to come back and to save every single person. Every single person came home after 2 years. This is, if you can imagine, staring out into an abyss of freezing cold ice and uncertainty for 2 years and having your leader come back and save not you, but your entire team so you can go home to your family. That's Ernest Shackleton. And that's the story of 1914 to 1916. And he had developed such deep rapport, trust, and adaptability and involvement with his team that he was able to do that. That's still the skills that are required today for leadership. And that is a lost art. And we need to bring that back. We need to empower people to bring back their gifts, their superpower, their magic, who they are and what they are, to be real leaders and not a manager. There's a difference between management and leadership. Leadership is about having a philosophy. It's about having your values so well defined that you're going to go into this direction like Ernest did, and people are going to follow you. It's a voluntary thing. And you are volunteering your time and commitment because you are so passionate about your values and your mission that others believe in it too. It's that level of vision that creates real leadership today.
Love it. Love it. For our lovely listeners out there and the community of people who are continuing to consume this podcast. By the way, this was a masterclass of storytelling, so go back and listen to it again. Really nicely done. Let's stick with the topic, though, of leadership, Jake. There is a lot of pressure on these leaders nowadays, and we hear all the time in our business that we need to increase win rates, we need to win deals faster, we need to protect margins, and we all need to do it by yesterday, by the way, right? What helps people cut through that noise and bring sort of clarity to your team when everything feels urgent? What is it that these leaders nowadays need to do? And you alluded a little bit in your story that you've just told, but can we get a little bit more specific on that?
Yeah, sure. We see this every day. The pressure mounts every day. It's almost like a pressure cooker, right? When you have something and you put it in a pressure cooker and it's just intense. And every day, due to competitive threats that come in, due to forces of budget constraints, and whether they're political constraints or tariffs or whatever it is that's causing all these different areas of pressure coming in, for leaders to be successful today, the most simple thing people can do is be grounded. And the way to be grounded is to have daily habits and being persistent and consistent in these daily habits. And there are certain things that we know through neuroscience and some of the other studies that people can do to remain grounded and present and aware. Oftentimes we get too lost in the reflection of the past or anticipation of the future. And some exercises we do with leaders in the executive coaching programs that we run is around this exercise of the mirror or the window. And if you imagine yourself looking into the mirror, it's wonderful. Sometimes you look really good and you look great in the mirror, but you're reflecting back on yourself and you see yourself, but you also see everything that's behind you, right? So you're looking almost into the past, and that's fine. You can do that. But if you turn your vision to the window and now you're looking outside the window, and outside the window, you see infinite possibilities of anything that can happen. You see the mountains, you see the meadows, the trees, the forest, the stars, the sun, the sky. Anything you want exists out the window. Leaders have to be visionary enough to see what's possible out the window and have that vision and that level of empowerment and excitement that will spread with their teams while remaining grounded. You have to be grounded and you have to be present. It's the only way you can deal with the stress. And stress, if we think about it, we all deal with stress. We deal with it in a variety of different ways. And we talk about pressure, we talk about stress, and there are techniques that we know we can perform to alleviate a lot of that stress. Obviously, exercise. And some of the greatest leaders, most wealthy people, successful people, I know balance their mind, body, and spirit very well. They exercise daily. They meditate. They do yoga. They go outside for walks. We know when you go outside in nature, it increases your endorphins, right? We know when you're in nature, your oxytocin goes up. If you have a dog or a cat and you're petting the dog or cat, or you're hugging a loved one, your oxytocin goes up. These are what we call the angel cocktail: serotonin, endorphin, dopamine, oxytocin. We're able to do things naturally to increase those. And when we do that, we are in a higher, better state, and we're vibrating at a higher frequency. So I would argue for leaders that are really successful, they're grounded, they're present, they're aware, they have a true sense of self, they're able to observe their thoughts and feelings and emotions, and they're able to look out the window and have a vision of what that future is. That's very powerful.
Love it. Love it. Again, for the audience, storytelling best practice example number 2 in this podcast. Great. Really fabulous. I love it. No, this is huge, because a lot of people, leaders in the space that just, the pressure is crazy. And, it's one thing to hit your numbers once, as in Austria we say every blind chicken finds a corn every now and again. But it's another thing to really build a team that consistently deliver, and that comes with a lot of pressure.
Yeah, sure.
I fully agree, and I love the grounded, present, aware sense of self and vision. Very nice. What have you seen work when it comes to creating these high performance teams that are both repeatable and sustainable? Because it's one thing to do something once, it's another thing to consistently execute.
Oh, I love that question. Thank you. I would say the shelf life of a high performing team is probably 3 years, maybe 5 tops, but only a few years. And the reason why is because the only thing that is constant is change. Everything's changing all the time. And we're like a river that's constantly flowing. And if you want to go somewhere, right, you have to set your sail. If you're sailing, you have to set your sail and you have to hit the wind the right way. You got to measure everything so you can go, right? And you have to build tension. And if you think of a rubber band, if you want to fling a rubber band and make it go far, what do? You have to pull it back and grab tension. The farther you pull it back, let it go, the farther it goes. Pull it back too much, it breaks. Don't pull it back enough, it doesn't go anywhere. So teams are the same way. And when we look at the characteristics of the humans, the personalities of the teams, as mentioned, the leader has to have a vision. It has to have a certain energy. We talk about charisma. We talk about being a magnet. We talk about having, being likable. I mean, people don't really talk about it. And 82% of all the people you will meet for the first time, and we do a 7-Eleven rule. 7-Eleven's a party store here in the United States, whatever. But that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in 7 seconds, humans will have 11 impressions about you in the first 7 seconds. We're going to judge. We're going to impose our limiting beliefs, our biases, and we're going to make a decision in that first 7 seconds. So that first 7 seconds is so important for leaders to be authentic and to land who they are, to have the team just, wow, oh my gosh, I want to go work for that person. So that's number one. The leader is so important for the team. Secondly, is the characteristics of the players on the team. We see this in sports teams. We see this if you're a musician. We see this with bands. We see it in orchestras. We see it whatever it is. And, a lot of the time the members don't get along all the time. And a lot of times I'll hire people that are opposite. One person maybe, I'll just use, general term, an introvert, the other is an extrovert, or one person has this skill set and the other person is completely opposite. And a lot of times people are like, why are you putting these two opposites together? They're never going to get along. And I'm like, they might not get along all the time. But what happens is this yin and yang thing starts to happen and people start to notice it. So understanding the characteristics and personalities of the people that you put together is crucially important, and knowing that there's going to be a shelf life, because eventually people are going to grow, they're going to change, they're going to move to a different team, just like a sports team. They're going to get recruited somewhere else, or they're going to decide they want to do something else. And so what we often ask these people to flush out, what are they? Who are they? What do they want to do to make sure they're the right fit? Obviously, we're evaluating. There's like 3 or 4 things we really look at. What are your attributes? Attributes, your North Star, your values. I dig deep into values, because if our values all align, chances are we're really going to do really good together. If our values are way off, then it's going to be difficult. Our personalities can be different, but our values should be aligned, and that should be attached to the vision. So our values, our attributes, our accomplishments. We want people that are high performance or have a track record of success or have capability. And we look for people that are really motivated to be there, right? And then the skills, just the general skills. So how do we recruit people onto the team? A lot of managers and leaders, half the time we spend is getting rid of the people that we accidentally put in the wrong place. It's an art. It's a little bit of science, it's a little bit of art. So in order to build the high performing team, you need the vision, and you need to match the right personality types, and then you need to lead. And we talk about vision, strategy, execution, and relationship building. And those are some of the levers, and knowing that the team's not going to last forever.
Right. And how does AI play into this whole thing? No shortage of the whole hype around it. Obviously, it's a key thing going forward. Focus on how leaders can actually use it to sharpen their edge. What have you seen there as how can it support the sort of the leadership quest?
Yeah. So AI is a tool. Just like anything else, it can be used to build something, or it can be used to smash something, right? It's the human in the loop and how we use it. And I often think we're going to see a dramatic, change every few months, 6 months, year. I can only imagine what it's going to be like years from now. And as humans, I often think about, I mentioned my great grandfather came here from Sicily. And he built his house by himself, right? And he built it with tools that we couldn't even imagine using today. We're talking the late 1800s. And like, how would you build a house if I don't have a power saw? How could I, what would I do without electric drill? What would I do without the equipment? And he was really good at mathematics, and he did everything by hand, and he could write the math down. Fast forward to today, I can barely do math without a calculator. Right. I'm not, and it's just like spelling, grammar, and without spell check, it's very difficult to even, have the correct grammar or correct spelling. So I think we have to caution ourselves about how we're going to use AI, if it's going to actually make us smarter, or if it's going to actually be a crutch for us. And what I'm finding happening is that leaders that are able to use AI to get information, for actionable information that they can act on very quickly, quicker than ever, to make more accurate decisions, whether they're financial decisions around P&L or decisions around making changes to the business or optimizing or market transitions or barriers to entry, whatever that is, that's important and that's cool. That works. But what we come down to is retention and application. How well, because I could write something out. I could have wrote out everything in AI to answer all your questions today. But for me to retain it and apply it to make it meaningful, be very difficult because I didn't write it.
Right. Exactly. Love that take. Let's shift gears a little bit from the leadership topic a little bit to the enterprise, sort of the C-suite level. Depending on what research you take a look at, fact is that the sales environment is getting more and more complex, more and more decision makers. Again, depending on what research you look at, there is many different decision makers, and engaging with the C-suite and engaging with senior level executives is going to be more and more important. What have you seen in terms of best practices when it comes to engaging these senior level people? What are the best salespeople doing out there to really have that senior level engagement and have it done in the right way?
Yeah. So there's a area of language. There's a different set of words and metaphors and adjectives and verbs and nouns that CEOs or CIOs, C-level, whatever, executive leaders speak. There's a different language. And we encourage our sales reps to study the language of the customer. And what we find is that if you were like me when I started early in my career, when I got fully into sales after my application development software days, it was all smiling and dialing, right? And I was just, if I could make 100, calls a day. We didn't really have the internet so much back then, so it was hard to get all the research. We had email and stuff like that, but we didn't really. We were just literally would go, to the phone book and call companies and try to get meetings, and then we would drive out and have a meeting, right? And shake hands, break bread, and look each other in the eye and build some type of rapport based on in-person stuff. Smiling and dialing was crucial. Today, with LinkedIn and Google Ads and all the different marketing and everything we can do online, it's a different beast. In the digital seller today on that level is completely different, but they're geared towards the frequency, consistency, and being persistent. It's a numbers game. Those people have a very hard time going in front of an executive to have an executive conversation because the language up here is much different. So getting from somebody that's a beginning early in career and aspire a seller, I think it's a great skill set to have, is to learn how to cold call and have that experience. And then we grow the person from there. But it's a mind shift. It's a growth mind shift along the way. I also encourage people that want to get into sales and maybe you're in college or in high school, go out and wait tables, work in a restaurant, because you'll learn very quickly how to deal with things like pressure, as we talked about, how to take orders, how to deal with the cooks in the back end of the kitchen who will get upset if things don't go right, and how to sell. You can upsell a lot to somebody when they're seated at your table if you just know how to do it, if you're warm and competent. Again, 82% of all the people you meet for the first time will like you if you are warm and competent. That's a different skill than going into a boardroom or working with executives. When you get up to that level of an executive engagement and relationship, you really have to use silence, you have to pause, and you have to listen. And that is a skill that it has to be developed over time. We see a lot of reps that will step over themselves. They get uncomfortable with the pause. I just did it for 3 seconds. Your listeners are probably like, where do you go? There's a little bit of tension there. But the pause and the silence and being aware of the language and the body language. And we teach our reps at this level 2 things. One, storytelling, as you stated earlier. But second is also EQ. And we have EQ at this level to where we're not only observing our customers, but we understand their language and their biggest problems. And their problems are sometimes massive, especially on the global scale, right? Whether it's new market penetration, new revenue models, earnings calls, just a lot of different, factors and pieces that come into that of what they care about, whether it's supply chain, customer acquisition, revenue, profit, whatever, regulatory fines, compliance, whatever that is, IP leakage, a lot going on that level. So we teach people 5 things in emotional intelligence. And these are the leaders that are able to sit at the boardroom and they get invited back because they have great listening skills. They're present. They speak the customer's language and they pause. They speak less than the customer. If you're speaking more than your customer, then you have to recalibrate. In the 5 elements of the EQ that we teach people, number 1 is self-perception. How are you perceiving yourself? How are you showing up? Number 2 is self-expression. That's how others perceive you. How are you being perceived? A lot of times we think we're being perceived a certain way, but others would disagree. The next one is just interpersonal skills. Interpersonal skills is how do you mingle in a social setting? How do you work the cocktail party? How do you have the elevator conversation? How do you have the discussion in the boardroom? What do you do if you run into an executive while you're out grocery shopping? What do you do in a social setting at an event? Interpersonal skills is that network. The next piece is decision making. Because every day we calculate thousands of thoughts and hundreds of emotions, and they equate to actions. And the only thing we can control in life are 3 things, if you believe this. Number 1, your thoughts. Number 2, your words. And number 3, your actions. And aligning those to a higher level of an executive presence is where we see the best engagement. So your decision making, your ability to make decisions and taper down your thoughts, the internal dialogue that goes on. We can tell when people are sitting here talking to somebody and you're not listening because you're thinking about something else. Right, we want you to be present. We want you to be listening, and we want you to absorb. And decision making comes into play because you have to make decisions about what am I going to say next, or decisions about how to solve a problem, which that comes now into the 5th element. We touched on this earlier, stress management. How do you deal with your stress? Because we see a lot of people, they get so overwhelmed, stressed out, and they blow up. They say things they regret, or they trip over themselves. And that happens in front of an executive. It's not a good experience. So you have to manage your stress in a very elegant way. And I'll go back to being grounded. And there's really probably 3 things that are really important. I call it the CFG model. It's coherence, fluency, and groundedness. If you can master those 3 things, you can sit in the room with a president, a CEO, an executive, a world leader, anybody.
Right. It's interesting, those 5 points that you have mentioned, and CFG is in addition to that. Now, do you hire according to them? Do you assess people according to those points that you have shared? Is that taken into consideration as well?
So the hiring thing is really fascinating, and I'm going to probably do a white paper on it because I find that most people get hiring wrong, and I'm victim of that as well. I've had probably more bad hires than good hires. And then there's acquisition hires where, just recently we did a reorg and I acquired a team, right? And so how do I now work through the mechanics and assess their capabilities so I can empower them and help them rise? I generally do apply some techniques, but whether or not I can assess it, my new thing that I do now is I have to be, and this is the AC period, I have to meet you in person before I hire you.
Yeah.
Oh
my God. Such a difference, isn't it?
I have to sit down. I have to shake your hand. I got to break bread with you. I got to see how you treat the waiter or the waitress. I got to see how if you open it, what you do, how you do it. And that to me, as being an EQ assessor, is really important. And that scares people. Are like, oh no. But I'm like, yeah, that's true. And I'm not perfect at any of this stuff. But that's one very important thing when I do the hiring now. I have to kind of see you in person. And then number two, if I can detect two things, one, that you have, three maybe, growth mindset. I need you to have a growth mindset. And that means getting feedback and internalizing things without getting defensive or applying limiting beliefs or bringing your biases in. I need you to be open, and I'll be open as well. And that's for growth mindset. So growth mindset. Right. Number three is coachability. And that goes hand in hand. How well can you be coached? Are you coached? There are some people that just don't want to be coached at all. And there's a difference between coaching somebody that works for you versus different ICF type coaching, which is, completely unrelated. Like, I have no bias, of coaching this person, but people that work for you, you do, because you want them to perform. You want them to improve their productivity and hit their numbers. So are they coachable? Do they have a growth mindset? And the motivation. This is something that we really can't teach people. Right. I would rather tame a Mustang, right, than prod a mule, right? Or it would really be. It's so important to have people that are motivated, and we see this on the follow up. You'd be surprised about how many people we interview that don't follow up, that don't show any motivation, that don't consistently. We look for people that are going to be consistent and persistent and are showing high levels of motivation.
So many things I completely agree. And I've experienced myself when you think, come on, this is not rocket science, right? This is common sense. And if that's not the case, how you behave, then I'm not even considering you. It's really interesting. I'm looking at the clock here. We're well over our time, but this is worth the listen, by the way. This is fantastic. But it leaves me with my last question that I will ask on every single podcast with consistency, because it's really interesting to analyze the data. And we have something like 70 plus episodes nowadays on the B2B Sales Trends Podcast, which we are extremely proud of. That's great. Tell me about in your opinion, what are the top 3 qualities of elite salespeople? So in this day and age, what are the top 3? And think about this in prioritizing this. In number 1, quality, number 2, quality, and number 3, quality, in your opinion, that elite salespeople nowadays need to execute and possess.
It's almost like I have to synthesize everything we've talked about into 3 words. Can I use AI for this? Okay.
Nope.
No, I know. This is coming right from the brain here.
Right.
Actually, it's going to come from the heart. I think we have more intelligence in our heart than anything else. And the real question is, what are the 3 honest things you could say? Signal clarity. Number 1, clarity. They got to clearly know what they're doing and why. They got to be clear. They got to be clear on their purpose. And we do exercises to get clarity. What am I? What do I want? What am I grateful for? Be very clear. You have to be very clear. You have to know exactly what they're solving and why. Straight up. Clarity. Adaptive momentum. It means that they have to be able to adapt to the change that occurs, because we are in such a rapid, disruptive state right now that if you're not adapting, you're dying. And the customers will smell that. They'll see that, unbelievable. And the third one, I got 10 I want to choose from. The third one, straight up consistency, man. There's nothing beats consistency. Yeah, I go to bed at about 9:30. I get up around 4:30. I get more work done before 8 a.m. than half the people that even got out of bed yet. And I try to be as consistent. I'm not 7 days a week, but I try to be consistent as possible. And those that are consistent and focus on daily habits get results faster. Don't focus on the outcome, focus on the daily rep, the daily habit, and be consistent.
Love it. Love it. My lovely people, you heard it here first from Jake. Signal clarity, adaptive momentum, and consistency every single day to live it.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, Jake. I know our listeners very much appreciate your insights and your thought leadership. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
2 calls to action, my lovely people. Go to the B2B Sales Trends.com site, subscribe or share this or other episodes with people you like, but you think could benefit from that content, as well as go to our YouTube channel, B2B Sales Trends Podcast, and to globalperformancegroup.com and check out our win rates calculator and see how your current win rates rank compared to your industry average. Until the next episode, look after yourself, look after your customers, and of course, your loved ones, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.